Hello and welcome to the first episode of Reach the Masses podcast. I'm Travis.
And I'm Heather.
Reach the Masses is a podcast that got in my head by listening to Kevin Smith and all of his podcasts.
His Smodcasts.
His Smodcast network. There was one where he's literally talking about Frasier, every episode of Frasier, and I said, okay, I'll give it a shot now. If he can talk about Frasier, every episode of Frasier, you and I have been friends forever and at least forever. And,
at the very least.
And we talk about pop culture, and we both love pop culture, and I figured this would be a good outlet for us to
explore those ideas.
Exactly.
And share them with the masses, as it were.
Yes, give our opinion, give our voice to what we think, because there are some really good reviews out there, but sometimes I want them to talk about more or go more in depth about something.
Right, or they miss a topic that you would like to see covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to kind of give you a little bit of a background about ourselves, I love TV, love movies, have my whole life. I collect comics. I love superheroes and all things superhero related. Vast knowledge of useless trivia in my head on all things superhero, anime. It's kind of, a little bit of everything. I know a little bit about everything, and I just enjoy books as well, because that's one of the things we'll also be talking about, not just media from TV and movies, but actual books and authors that we enjoy as well.
Yeah.
A little bit about you.
My background is books mostly. A lot of television. I always say that I was raised by the television. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but I'm okay with that.
Our generation was kind of in front of the TV more than...
Yeah, we were the start of not the after school programs, but definitely the after school cartoons.
Yes, Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, after school. I know I personally quit the Girl Scouts in kindergarten because I was missing the chipmunks after school. So,
who was your favorite?
Oh, Alvin.
Of course.
Of course Alvin was. Alpha male. Not an alpha male, but I can pretend to be one.
Enjoy that role of alpha male.
Absolutely.
So for today's first episode, what we're going to do is, this is trying out different things. This is the first episode. We're going to look at something older that you all may or may not have seen or heard about. And then we'll look at something new that's going out right now. And then we're going to have a main discussion. So first up, we're going to look at something old. And in honor of it being 20 years old this year, we figured we would look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy, the brainchild of
Joss Whedon.
He I read that he had it in his head that he wanted to flip it and make the woman the hero. The blonde who usually dies very quickly to be the hero of the story.
Yeah. He also made her the villain. I mean, right from the opening sequence.
Right. Oh, and I guess we should say that we're going to be discussing the first season of Buffy for this podcast, and spoilers do attach from here on out. From the beginning throughout the rest of this podcast, we will be discussing books and movies and all things pop related, and just to give you a heads up, it will be spoiler related. So we'll try to name what we're discussing beforehand, and then you are duly warned that it is a spoiler. But again, it's been out for 20 years, so hopefully you've seen it. And if you've not, it's a good show to pick up.
Yeah. It's on Hulu right now.
Yes, it just came off of Netflix, which is weird.
Yeah.
That they took it out on its 20-year anniversary. You think
right,
that they would...
But Hulu was there to save the day, so.
Yes, and because some of the older shows on Hulu, I noticed they don't do the commercials.
Yeah.
But Buffy still does the commercials.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess it's not reached that age where it
wouldn't have them.
Would take the commercials. So we're looking at the first season. Joss is introducing these characters. We both rewatched the first episode to kind of remind us. And I guess we'll just kind of talk a little bit about that. So what was your impressions of the first episode?
Oh, like
97 all over again?
Yeah, absolutely. They were a year ahead of us. Well, when it started, they were a year ahead of us. Now, by the time they graduated, they were 2 years ahead of us. But like the language was one thing, and that's still with me now. Is I still use those phrases. I still say it gives me the Wiggins, and they changed how teenagers talk. That show.
Well, yeah,
really,
and that's part of his writing.
Yeah.
And that was something I noticed right from the very beginning, because it opens with Darla.
Yeah.
And a boy going into the school, and he kind of does a parallel of what you're going to get with Buffy. Is you're not going to get what you normally expect, because there's one part where she's a noise that you hear in the back, and Darla is acting all, she's blonde headed, she's acting all scared and afraid, and like, what was that? And then the boy's like all comforting her, like, don't worry, I got this. Like, you think something's going to happen, and they're both going to die. But it turns out the twist is that the blonde is the big bad. She's a vampire and immediately kills him. So that's kind of a good parallel, I think, between how
that's juxtaposed with Buffy, the blonde, being the hero, the heroine of the piece.
Exactly. And I was just, the quality, I mean, it was 1997, and they did get a lot better with age. And, you can tell it's dated by the CG of the vampires. And even the fighting is... Yeah. They haven't got into I guess they haven't done it. With more time, they got better with...
yeah, because it started as a mid-season replacement. So, I mean, it wasn't...
And it ran for 12 episodes?
Yeah.
The first season?
12 or 14. But, so they weren't throwing a lot of money at it to start with.
Right. So, but the thing that did shine through, like you said, was the language, the writing of Joss Whedon.
And those characters, I mean, right from the beginning, they were memorable. They each had something unique about them that just made them memorable. And it established the Scoobies, as they were eventually called. The main Scoobies, which some came and went, but the main ones was Willow, Xander, Buffy, Giles. Yeah. Cordy is there. Cordelia is there, but she doesn't join them till later, and then she goes on her own path. But that's the core, I guess, of the Scooby Gang. And that was one thing that I just, how dated it shows was there's this part where Cordelia is the typical high school mean girl before Mean Girls, and she was putting down Willow, which was the nerdy girl. Made a comment about, her mom dressed her, softer side, found the softer side of Sears. Yeah. Which is just crazy that would, Sears is even a thing now. And also the cell phone that Cordelia pulls out after Buffy holds her up. That's a brick. It's like 2 steps up from the Zach Morris phone. Yeah. Sorry. Zach Morris was a character on a show called Saved by the Bell. Which is a whole other can of worms. That's another episode of Reach the Masses. All of them, you're right, all of them were really well established in that first episode. Mm-hmm. I don't know what kind of jacket Angel is wearing when he meets Buffy, because it looks very shiny, and I think it was the velvet jacket. Was it a velvet jacket? I think so. That, or it was that plastic pleather. It just looked really weird on camera. It looked shiny, and it threw me off when I first saw it. Which, later on you find out, like, just a week before, he was in a dumpster eating rats. So, but for those of the show, I guess that we should do a synopsis of what the show is. Buffy is the vampire slayer, once a generation, chosen one Yeah, she's the chosen one.
She's the chosen one to fight
kill
to fight the demons. It was originally a movie, and then they kind of play off the movie because at the beginning of the episode, she's moving from L.A. Like all that stuff that happened in the movie,
Kind of
if it
happened. Some of it happened. Like she burnt the gym down
right?
because it was full of vampires.
Right. And then so they still go with it. I mean, he doesn't flat out ignore it, but but they don't really bring it up that much, except for the first episode because she's the new girl at Sunnydale, which turns out is the portal to hell, the Hellmouth.
The Hellmouth.
Which is over the library where they introduce Giles, which is the Watcher of Buffy, Anthony
Stewart Head.
Stewart Head, yes. It's a really great show. There's a lot of action, humor, comedy.
It was one of the first shows to bring that amount of levity. Like, they could be in the heat of a dramatic moment and then turn it around and just say something
That's
completely funny, and it just brings that levity, and like happens in real life. You know, you can be having a very dramatic discussion and then something happens and it brings levity back to you.
yeah, and it introduced so many tropes to the TV world. I don't know if it was the first, but I know they did it better than most, where they had the big bad, is what they called it. Like it led up to, there was an overall arc to the season, and you had a main villain, and then there had lots of episodes that were filler, but there was episodes that, even with the filler ones, there were still bits that led you
related to
the big bad that was leading to the final battle between Buffy and the big bad. The first season I would recommend it. It gets so much better if you can get past the 90s weirdness of it, which I don't even think it's a bad thing. It's just different, and just to see that it gets 10 times better the next season and on throughout its run. I think it peaks after the 5th season,
as most shows tend to do, though.
And then,
in my opinion.
But then again, I wouldn't give up some of those episodes that come out after that, like Once More with Feeling, and then there's lots of stuff, little episodes after that season that I enjoy, but I think it should have ended after the 5th season. I think
it covers a lot of ground, and they kill the main protagonist, and that was kind of supposed to be it, but then as things happen in TV, it was switched networks and came back.
That's right. It was on
the WB.
It was on WB, and then it went to UPN.
Yeah.
And UPN is not even around
and
anymore.
Neither is WB. It's now the CW.
So if we said the WB and you did not know what we talked about,
now you know.
But yeah, so you had Buffy, who was a former cheerleader. And
popular girl
where she was at in L.A. She becomes the chosen one, and the whole part of it is her wanting to live a normal life and not feeling like she fits in. And I think that was one of the good things about that show, was that no, you can't relate to fighting.
Not everybody can relate to the cheerleader, and not everybody can relate to somebody who fights demons.
Right.
But you can absolutely relate to somebody who feels different and is probably different and struggles.
And then that's the whole thing, was that there's several episodes, and it does it more while she's in high school, where I want to live a normal life. I want to do like normal kids. I want to go to prom. I want to, which,
have a normal boyfriend, have a job, a car.
Yes, have all those normal things, and then she doesn't get them because she feels different. And I think everyone can relate to, at some point in our life, dealing with those emotions and feelings. And I think that's what, yes, you can't relate to fighting vampires and demons, but you can relate to those emotions and feelings. And they use that supernatural approach to kind of trick you as a metaphor for what they were doing. And then she becomes best friends with Willow and Xander, which I was wondering, did you think that when you were originally watching this way back when, the first season, just based off the first season, not from what happens to the characters, but did you think Willow and Xander were going to get back together based on the first season?
Yeah, well, I thought that, or he's always going to be that goofy kid who pines over Buffy, kind of uses Willow to fulfill that
because
ache in him, if you will.
because I think out of all of them, Xander isn't the one that grows the most. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, over the whole series, but.
Yeah.
The reason I brought that up was that, when she first meets Willow, Willow mentions that they used to be boyfriend and girlfriend because he took her crayons. But he broke up because they took her crayons.
Her Barbie.
Her Barbie.
Her Barbie. Yeah.
Took her Barbie. But they've been best friends for so long, and I think, didn't they even hint about that at one point? Like right around the time Oz was introduced, like maybe he had feelings for her? Or...
Oh, no, they completely, he was with Cordelia. She was with Oz.
That's right.
And
Rebar.
They cheated on each other, or cheated on their respective significant others.
So it did culminate in something of...
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, because years later, whenever he was going to get married, they talked about it, but some changes had happened with Willow, and so it never came to fruition again.
Right, yes, because that's where... Yes, definitely spoiler heavy. I'm sorry. If you hadn't watched season 1, continue to watch it. It was the prom episode
because they were in formal wear, and they made jokes about them being in formal wear.
And that's when Buffy got the umbrella of protection.
Yeah, and the school acknowledged that she was somewhat of a savior for them, even though it went unremarked.
And I guess that also dates it because it is pulp culture. They do a lot of references, like I said, the softer side of Sears and things like that. So if good writing is good writing.
Yeah.
But if you hear some of those references, you may not get that this was popular for like a minute in the grand scheme of pulp culture. Yes, it was popular at the time of writing it, and now it's probably faded, and you probably don't know who they're talking about or what's going on. But overall, it has that.
It has staying power. The message remains. And
then... Like we said, Giles is her watcher, who's also the librarian of the school, who kind of gives them researches and continues to train Buffy. And then they introduce Cordelia, which was who is the Buffy of Sunnydale. The former
tall,
Buffy.
Brunette Buffy.
And then they introduce the mysterious character of Angel.
Yeah.
And then it turns out Angel is a vampire. However, he was cursed by gypsies.
With a soul.
With a soul, yes. And then that's tormented him, and now he's wanting to do good, and he latches onto Buffy, and then it becomes a love interest. And, I mean, my gosh, if that show aired today, I'm sure there's still something on Tumblr about them, the Buffy and Angel. But
absolutely.
But it would be all over, it would be that was our... Eventually, when it gets down to later episodes with the other vampire that gets introduced of her love interest, Spike, that was almost like our Edward and Jacob from Twilight, Team Angel, Team Spike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was...
Yeah. I was never Team Spike.
No.
But I was always Team Angel, if we want to use that.
Use that, yeah.
Use those
But,
terms.
I mean, if a show like that aired today, I don't know if they would...
Well, they'd all be teenagers to start with.
They would all be teenagers, yes. I don't know if they would look the way they... I mean, I'm not saying they're all uggos or anything, but...
No.
But, like, you look at the CW now, and you look at they're doing Rivendell, Archie, and they're all, like, supermodel good looks.
Right, yeah.
I mean, other than, like, Sarah Michelle Gellar is attractive, obviously, and Charisma Carpenter is attractive. Mm-hmm. And Willow... I can't remember her name.
Allison Hannigan.
Allison Hannigan, thank you. She's very attractive, but in that first season, she's plain Jane, and she looks very plain Jane.
Yeah, she's meant to be that,
and she's meant to look that way. And I think in most shows today, the plain Jane is like
still
the supermodel
hot.
Yeah, supermodel hot, and then Xander was attractive. Oh yeah, and that was the other thing I was want to talk about. They introduced you to a character named Jesse. I found it interesting. I was reading the trivia, and Whedon was wanting to kind of trick everybody, which was go on to be his staple in all of his things, like killing off a character. Jesse dies.
Yeah.
But he was, at the first of it, you thought he was part of the Scooby Gang.
Yeah.
And I read that...
Because he's one of the best friends.
Yes, of Xander and Willow. Whedon was wanting to put him in the opening credits, like he was a main character, to throw everyone off. And I thought that would be brilliant, but they just didn't have the time or the money to edit other shots of him to make it look like he was part of it. There was a show that did that. It's called The Shield.
Oh, I remember that. I never watched it, but I remember that.
Michael Chiklis.
Yeah.
And it was a cop show, and in the opening credits, there was a cop. Spoilers on The Shield. There was a cop that was going undercover because Michael Chiklis' character was a bad cop, and he was going undercover, this cop, and he's in the opening credits, and he's got all these scenes, and you're like, oh, it's going to be like a whole season of them playing cat and mouse, and that's how it's portrayed in the first episode throughout the whole episode, and then the last 10 seconds kills him.
Wow.
Because he knows he's undercover trying to expose him.
That's a bold move for a
And
television
that's what
show.
everyone was talking about, was how they took that step of like killing someone off like that, and putting them in the opening credits to fake everyone out. And see, Whedon was doing it back in '97, and I couldn't tell you when Shield started, but I mean it was a few years later. So I mean,
because
that was the first time I saw where they did. And you know, Game of Thrones since then has done that with the main character, but it's went like a whole season.
Yeah.
Ned
American
Stark.
television shows now are killing off main characters left and right, and sometimes just bringing them back.
Yeah.
In several ways. Sometimes the same character dies many times and comes back several different ways.
Exactly. I mean, death doesn't have the same meaning as it did.
No, now living is more unique in American television shows.
And I think because of all the different, how much that we have and the need for all the different genres we have and all the different outlets that we have, is not just the main prime time shows. There's all these.
There's access to so much more.
Hulu and Netflix, AMC, even the basic cable are, great shows that wouldn't make it in prime time because they don't have the numbers, but they're still nevertheless great shows. Because before they didn't want, because that was their livelihood. Of now you can get killed off in a series, and then next week you're in 2 more shows. You know.
Yeah, 2 different shows even.
So if you haven't figured it out, we love Buffy, and then it also spinned off a second series, which we will probably get around to.
I'm actually currently watching it.
Angel?
Just for fun at night whenever I go to bed.
And I guess we should wrap up with how the season ends. The big bad, as we mentioned earlier, was the Master.
Yeah, Fruit Punch Mouth, as he is called by Buffy in one of the episodes.
And he's a very ancient, old vampire who doesn't even... Because in Buffy, they do a special effect where when they become vampires, their nose gets all... their face changes.
Yeah.
And then they can revert back to human. But the Master, at least in the first season, has established that he's been around so long that he can't transform back into human. Right. He's been a vampire so long that he can't go back. And then it's him and his minions, and they're trying to get to, what is it called, the harvest?
Or no, the harvest happens, they try to make it happen, which would release him because he is trapped. He is trapped underground.
Was it by gypsies?
Not this time. It should have been.
Should have been gypsies.
Should have been gypsies.
They don't like vampires.
Yeah. Or people who just kill their daughters in general. But he's trapped, and the harvest would have allowed him to get out of his bubble.
Yeah, it's in the first episode. I think it may be the second episode. He doesn't appear till the very end of the first.
Right. Yeah. He rises.
Yeah, and then the second episode, he's like walking, and he like puts his hand out, and it stops.
Like a
force field. Yeah, and then so there's also a prophecy that states that the Master will kill the Slayer.
Yeah.
And then that's one of the best scenes of the season is where, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying with Buffy about wanting to be a normal kid. And at the time, Sarah Michelle Gellar, when they filmed that, was 19 years old.
19.
Because it aired in March of 97, so they must have filmed it in 96.
Yeah.
And she hadn't quite she turned 20 in 97. So she was 19 years old, so she was still much a teenager. But there's that great line where she cries and she's upset and she's like, "I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die."
Yeah.
And she's saying it to Giles and Angel, and it's very gripping. And you will see her cry a lot. and
she's one of the best criers on TV, and by far.
It will get you almost every time.
It's a punch to the gut.
So they do that. She faces the Master and actually does.
She drowns.
He drowns her, and she dies. But they bring her back.
Yeah, Xander's there, And I guess at the time of the prophecy with the Master killing the Slayer, they didn't know about CPR.
Right.
So Xander performs the CPR, and she comes back, which leads to a whole other plot
that you'll see in the second season.
Yeah.
And I know we just said that they killed characters off and bring them back, and they literally just did that in this season with Buffy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she comes back, and then once she comes back, it's like she doesn't have that prophecy hanging over her anymore. She's more confident. Is that what you? I mean, because then she goes on and kills the Master.
Yeah, she fully fulfills owns her Slayer destiny, her Slayer as a title, her Slayer-ishness.
And then she kills the Master. Which, when does his... Because it's funny because...
He doesn't die until the second season.
He doesn't die until the second season?
Right, no, he does the end of the first. But the kid...
The anointed one.
The anointed one. He dies in the second season.
Yeah. But his right-hand man in the first episode, he's been in all kinds of stuff.
Luke.
Luke is the vampire's name, but he was Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat movie, the second one. Mm-hmm. What's funny is that he comes back in season 2 as the judge.
That's right. He does.
Yeah.
I had forgotten.
Yeah, because that's him.
But that voice of his is really
it's one of those that
unmistakable.
he's been in a ton of stuff. He's one of those actors that
He's a good character
you
actor.
see him, and he's got one of those. He's been in a lot of stuff as an actor, but he also has got one of those memorable voices, perfect villain voices, and he's played. I think that's probably something we need to discuss, like best villain voices we've heard on cartoons and stuff.
Right, yeah.
You know, Tim Curry is, spoilers, going to be number one, I bet. But there's several good
give you
voice actors that are just, once you hear them,
it'll give you more trivia. Give you more trivia for your brain to store.
Yes. Looking it up and then categorizing it on how our opinion is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would be the first season of Buffy, and if we continue on with the second episode, we'll probably continue on the Buffy trail. We might go on to season 2. Season 2 is probably my favorite season of Buffy.
Really?
I think overall, that there's more episodes on there that I like, and then I love the way it ends, and just that whole dynamic between her and Angel.
It definitely has my favorite season finale of any television show that I've ever watched. Mm-hmm. Just the quotes alone are amazing.
I've noticed that since the Buffy era on TV shows, like usually the second season is where they hit their stride and they really produce good stuff. And I'm not saying that the other seasons are.
I think it's because the characters are still new enough, so you can still discover new things,
right,
and have new storylines. But they're also established. You don't have to introduce them,
right,
like you do.
Yeah, like a sequel to a movie, like the first movie, like superhero movie, you're establishing the hero.
Yeah.
And then the second movie, you establish the world and you get to play in the sandbox now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's usually how that works. And I think the second season is my favorite. And it's mainly just because of the Buffy Angel dynamic. And then, like you said, that season finale is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
But then again, the fifth season is probably a close second. I can't remember the fourth season.
Fourth season is college.
Oh, okay, yeah. Fourth season,
like there's some
good episodes,
good comedy in that fourth season,
and
there's some good character arcs in that.
And I guess that's one of the biggest things to take away from Buffy is that it is very much rich in the action and comedy and drama. I mean,
and you can draw quotes. It's kind of like drawing Bible quotes. You can relate it to a great many a thing, should you choose to do so.
And they do a really good job of introducing new characters along the way and making them feel like they've been there the whole time. Because like when I was talking about the Scoobies a minute ago, I was wanting to name off Oz and like
Anya, Tara, Dawn.
Yeah, all of them. It's just because once they get in with the Scoobies and they're part of the dynamic, it's just like they've been there. They're family.
Buffy's boyfriends.
That was the season 4 boyfriend. Him,
that guy.
That guy, that memorable character that had all the great lines that time.
Yeah, that exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that'll wrap up. That will wrap up our discussion of an old review that was very kind of here and there, but we're still learning our roots, so hopefully we'll
And it's close to our hearts, and hopefully it is or will be close to yours.
And hopefully you heard that with our discussion of talking about these characters. I think we really loved the show, and it was a big part of our, influenced a lot of our, a big part of our lives.
A big part of my psyche. I mean, if you want me to be honest.
I'm not saying you walk around with a stake or anything.
No. Or, I don't wear a cross around my neck and believe that they're vampires, but, I mean, there could be.
You never know.
We don't know these things. We're merely humans.
Okay. On to the something new review, something that just came out. Well, at the time of us doing this recording, it came out last Sunday. It was based on Neil Gaiman's American Gods, the show with the same name. They aired the first episode. This is an actual TV show based on the series.
Hey girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night?
So what would I call you if I was so inclined?
Shadow Moon, what might I call you?
What's today?
Wednesday.
Today's my day. I could use a fellow like you.
What did you think?
I loved it. I thought that it's the truest thing I've ever seen to the book that it's based on. And it hit all the right beats.
It did
Like the
really
book.
well on introducing the characters, and it didn't. And I'm trying to think of it from someone who hadn't read the book.
Yeah.
And how they would perceive it as opposed to, and I would like to think that they enjoyed it. I know someone that I work with hadn't read the book, and he watched the first episode and he thought it was great. And it did a really good job of introducing the characters, keeping the beats all there. I think it did an amazing job of introducing this world that is, if it wasn't, depending on who handled it, could be a really big mess.
Yeah.
Now, this is just the first episode. It could go crazy later on, and we could lose it.
Raving about something we're going to end up hating, but I highly doubt that will happen.
Just based on the first episode, it definitely grabs you and keeps you going.
Yeah. And the fact that Neil Gaiman himself was involved and really seemed to genuinely like how the first season went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you get the original and the author that did it behind it, it gives you a little bit more credibility to like it. However, you do have to worry about, I'm under contract.
Right, yeah.
I don't think Neil, I don't know Neil personally, but I mean, I think he would tell you if he didn't like it or not. And
right. I don't think he would.
I would believe
too
him.
much.
Yeah, I would trust his opinion of his characters and how they were portrayed.
Yeah, and he's really involved with it too, which helps think that he's not just being a mouthpiece under contract.
I guess we could talk about what kind of happens in the world. And again, this will be spoilers. I guess we won't try to go too far along in the story. We'll just talk about what happens in the episode.
In the first episode.
So the episode begins with Vikings landing on the New World.
Which it was supposed to be before Eric.
Yeah. The Viking
landed.
Yes, this was supposed to be
like 100 years prior.
before. Yeah, before. And that was one thing that caught me immediately was the hyper violence
yeah.
of that opening scene with the Vikings. The one scene in particular, it's crazy. He takes a step off the boat onto the beach. He takes a step out, and then literally from head to toe is covered in arrows.
Yes.
And then, so basically, they're stranded. They were starving to begin with. The Vikings, when they get there, they're starving to death, and they can't move forward because if they do, they will be shot to death by
the
Native Americans.
Native Americans, the soon-to-be Indians.
And so they're waiting for a wind to take them back, and there's no wind. Mm-hmm. So they pray to their gods,
They're trying to get the attention of their lead god, if you will,
Right.
their head god,
to get the winds.
to take them home.
So they begin starting doing sacrifices and
Which are not just like killing animals. It's like blinding themselves with a fiery knife, hot knife, or they burned one guy alive.
yes, that's when the wind started.
Yeah.
Because they did, well, I can't remember what the first, did they do the eye first?
I think the eye was first.
And there was no wind because they had like a bag of sand that
And they
was
would-
pouring out.
yeah.
And then after that, they'd look and there was no sand. And then when they burnt someone alive, they
the wind started to pick up.
to pick up. And then they did a whole battle with all the remaining ones. And then that's the
Yeah.
second hyper-violent
Yeah.
part where if you're not into gore, you may not like that part.
You may want to close your eyes.
Because, I mean, they literally get hacked in half and blood
Yeah.
is spilling. And it's like,
One guy's arm gets cut off so violently it flies not only through the sky but above the top of the screen.
doesn't it go into someone else? Like
Yeah, into the format, and it loses its sword, and the sword flies into a guy's throat.
So it's a little violent, is what we're trying to tell you.
During that first part.
Yes, and then there's a little bit toward the end.
Yeah, it
But-
ends on a violent key, or a bloody key, if you will.
It cuts to the main character of the series,
Shadow Moon.
Shadow Moon, who is currently in jail.
For robbing a casino. And
And
this is what it said.
Yeah, so there are some differences, and we may get into some spoilers later down the road. But he was robbing a casino. He was serving 6 years and was supposed to be out by the end of the week. And he has conversations with his cellmate, which they didn't tell the name of the cellmate. He started having a bad feeling. He says he feels the bad weather's approaching.
It feels like the air's constipated, and there's an axe hanging over him.
And he calls his wife,
Laura Moon.
and then she tells him they're having a surprise party, and then he hangs up. And then that night he starts the first of these, and in the books he has several of these weird
Kind of prophetic.
prophetic dreams.
Dreams.
Yes. Where he sees Laura and she calls him puppy, which they didn't get into anything about why she calls him puppy. Hopefully they will get into that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just wonderful Easter eggs if you've read the book.
Right, that you
that,
can...
that they just pick up on
Yeah.
right out. I mean, I wouldn't even say Easter egg. It's pretty much how it is in the book.
Yeah, it's fairly blatant if you've read the book. But if you haven't, it doesn't make any sort of difference in the plot of the episode. Or
Right.
how it's laid out.
It doesn't change anything, but
Yeah.
it's there if you've
It
read
doesn't
the book.
deny you knowledge if you don't know.
And then again, they may tell you why she calls him puppy, and they may not. I mean, you could
Or
go
why
either-
he robbed the casino, or...
yeah. And then the next morning, he gets sent to the warden, and they tell him that his wife is dead, and they're letting him out early. And then they
They let him out on a Wednesday.
let him out on a Wednesday. And
Or do they let him out on a Tuesday? Because he gets on the plane on Wednesday.
Well, he immediately leaves and goes to the airport. I mean, it kind of cuts to the airport, so you
Yeah.
can just say it's Wednesday. I think.
Well, he
there's-
stays overnight. It shows him sleeping.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a Tuesday then.
Yeah.
And then on a
Of course
Wednesday,
it was a Tuesday.
Wednesday though, he's at the airport. That's right, because he couldn't get a flight.
Yeah. So
'Cause
he
he-
said, how much for tomorrow?
Yes, you're right. I apologize. So yes, Wednesday. So on Wednesday, he's getting on the plane, waiting to board, and then you get introduced to the second main character of the show, Wednesday, and he's conning because there's the actress that's the teller. She's been in all kinds of.
She's another popular character actress.
Yes, she wouldn't let him do it. Wouldn't let him get on the plane earlier the day before. It was going to cost a lot more money because he had already had plane tickets
But for Friday.
for Friday, so he was trying to get it changed to the Tuesday.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't allow it because it would cost another $700 or some
And he couldn't do it for bereavement because he didn't have a death certificate.
copy of the death certificate. Yes. Yeah. So he asked how much is for tomorrow, and then while he's waiting to board his plane is where you get introduced to Wednesday, and he's giving a very kind of sad character. He's Wednesday is a con man.
Yeah. And he's pretending to be a demented older man.
Yes, like he's trying to. My son did this. I need to see my son.
But my son was just born.
Yes, my son was just born. I need to get to his christening.
Yeah.
But my son always just takes care of all the plane tickets. Yes, he always books my flights. So he immediately gets bumped to first class because the same woman that would gave Shadow grief felt sorry on him.
Yeah.
And then Shadow boarded the plane, and then he was in coach. However, there was someone sitting in his seat, so he got bumped to first class as well, and immediately sat beside Wednesday, which he didn't know who his name was. And that's the great line of when he wanted to know who he is, and he said, well, what is today? He said, today's Wednesday, my day.
Yeah.
And so call me Wednesday. And that's where you start to get more of the supernatural, because he knows things about Shadow that he shouldn't know.
Yeah, and it's probably no accident that Shadow's seat was taken and he got placed next to Mr. Wednesday.
And then they're on the plane for a while, and that's where he offers him a job, and then he says that no, he's got a job lined up, because to kind of backtrack, we forgot to mention that Laura was supposed to be setting up a surprise party with his best friend, who had a job waiting for him at a gym.
At a gym in Eagle Point.
Mr. Wednesday offers him a job. And he doesn't go into too much details at that point. Shadow.
He kind of tells him he has no problem hiring an ex-con. He'll provide him with a 401k, a pension,
right,
all of that.
So then he goes to sleep and has another prophetic dream, which there was a very funny line before that where Wednesday says that I can go to sleep anywhere. I have two gifts. I can go to sleep anywhere I want, or I go to sleep at any time. And then two is I always get what I want.
Yeah. It may take a while.
But I always get what I want.
Yeah.
But then he goes to sleep, Shadow goes to sleep, has another prophetic dream, wakes up, and the plane has been diverted because of the weather, and it would take another day, and he has to get to the funeral, so he rents a car, and he's on the road for several hours. Wednesday's not there when he wakes up.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone. It's just
Everybody's
him.
actually gone.
Yeah, he's the only one left on the plane, and they're waking him up. And then he gets a rental car, and then he's driving to Eagle Point. And then he stops at some sort of park and goes and finally screams. Because that's the one thing, is that he
never, other than being very silent and looking very solemn, he never displays any sort of emotion about Laura dying.
Right. Until he stops at the park and he goes and then he screams. And then that cuts us to another story, which I'm really glad that they are doing. Because in the book, there are several side stories that just kind of help build the world.
Yeah,
of
weave into the
American Gods.
plot later.
Right. Some of them do in the book, and some of them are just kind of giving you more filler
An establishment
of the world.
Who all's here and who all's not.
Right. And how they came to be.
Yeah, how they came here.
And then this one, the first thing that popped in my head was that was the best friend of on the show of Dharma and Greg. Greg's friend, the guy.
Oh, that's who that was.
Yeah.
I kept trying to figure out who that was.
Yeah, that's what popped in my head. Like, and in my mind, because I don't think they gave his name.
Yeah.
That was still that character. Like, this was his continuing story.
Absolutely. Now it is for me as well. But yeah, this is the scene. This is the scene from the book that everybody wanted to know
if it was going to be in there, because it is very.
It's graphic in the book. It's graphic.
It's more graphic in the book.
Yeah.
Than
yeah. There are a few subtle details, but that are different from book to screen. But
the long story on this one is that he meets this girl online, and in the book, we can tell you in the book she's actually a prostitute.
Yeah.
And this one is kind of like I met you through an online dating site.
App or site.
Yeah.
However
it could be
people
Tinder,
are doing it these days.
Yeah, Tinder, Match,
whatever,
Harmony, Match, Tinder.
Yeah.
One of those things, because he says his kids helped him set it up.
Yeah.
And so they meet, and they immediately go
to her room.
To her room, and then
after having drinks at a bar.
And then they immediately start having sex, and then that's when it gets another supernatural.
Yeah, this is where it gets extremely supernatural, and the whole back literature of the vagina dentata comes into play, which is
that 5 times 5,
right? This is a huge thing that is throughout history in literature, and it comes into play right here in a very dramatic manner.
Also want to point out that you are a history major.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
And a writer.
And a writer. So
I kind of have these little side quirks that are probably throwaways. But
that you will find out in the course of this podcast.
yes.
But so he wants her, she wants him to worship her.
Yes.
And then he starts the basic, I love you, I want you. And then he starts.
It becomes kind of a formal
Declaration.
prayer. Yeah, a formal prayer.
And then she starts to eat him,
Yeah, eat him
swallow him, but not through the mouth.
via her vagina.
Yes.
Vagina dentata. She eats him alive.
And you won't get this from other podcasts.
you see it happen.
Well, you see, he starts shrinking
Yeah.
as he's going in, and
Yeah, and then she pushes him the rest of it. And he thinks it's
him.
fantastic.
Yes.
He's loving every minute of that.
Right.
Which is the key difference in the whole vagina dentata myths in
Oh, really?
literature. Yes.
Okay.
It's usually not seen as a fun thing.
The more you know. So after that happens, she kind of flops back on the bed, and then that's pretty much her story as of right now. And I think
it helps her maintain her immortality and her youth
and I
because she
couldn't
looks younger afterwards.
okay, that's what I was going to ask you, because when I watched it, I couldn't tell if she looked younger after it happened.
Yeah. Not by, maybe by 10 years.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was dramatic. She was an old woman and now she's in her 20s.
Yeah, it wasn't that dramatic, no.
Okay, because I couldn't tell that much of a difference, so I didn't know if the screen that I was watching it on may have been the issue or what.
Yeah.
So it cuts from there. It goes back to Shadow. Mm-hmm. And he is at the alligator bar.
Yes, with those awesome alligator stools that are just uncomfortable, but look fabulous.
They look wonderful, yes. And he's ordering some food. He goes back and sits down.
From another very popular character actress.
Oh.
The lady at the bar, she's in pretty much everything all the time. The key things I remember her from, stuff like Donnie Darko.
Oh, okay.
The show with the trailer park. You'll just have to pull that right out because I can't remember what it's called.
The trailer park.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Earl?
No. It's a movie and a mini series.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she's in a lot of stuff. So he orders the food, then he goes to the bathroom, and no possible way for him to know where he's been or where he's at because he never told him where he was going. Wednesday is
in the stall.
And he pretty much picks up with the conversation right where it left off on the
Yeah.
plane, right before he went to sleep. And then he goes and talks to him some more, discuss some of the...
Also, this is where Shadow finds out that his best friend, Robbie,
died as well, because he says, you don't have a job, here's the paper, because they both died in the car crash. And then this is where Shadow thinks he's getting the upper hand on Wednesday because he flips a coin. And the other thing in the book, and they do it in here in the TV show, is that while in prison, Shadow learned coin tricks.
Yeah.
He knows how to do all kinds of stuff with coins. And there was one of the openings before he went to bed, he was knuckling the coin where he was making it go all the way up and down his knuckles. He tells Wednesday if it comes up heads, I'll work for you. Tails, I'll tell you to get lost.
Yeah.
And he flips it in a way that he knows always comes up tails. But then Wednesday again, supernaturally, does something and it comes up heads.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't say, because Wednesday walks away and just tells him it's going to come up heads. And it does. And
then he comes back with mead. Oh, and before he comes back with mead, we get introduced to a leprechaun.
Yeah.
Not a leprechaun you're thinking of.
No, this is a big, tall, red-headed fella.
Right. And I think he is on...
He's
Orange is the New Black.
He's Pornstache.
Pornstache.
And he was also the guy who stalked and hurt our dear Olivia Benson on Law and Order SVU.
Oh, okay. See, I'm not watched Law and Order, so
yeah. Well,
The Law and Order fans should be outraged, yes.
Yes.
But he's a leprechaun, and very well done. Does a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
And then he does coin tricks as well.
And he can pluck them right from the air.
Right. He says, Shadow's like, how do you do that? And he lists off all the different ways you could do it. He's loading your sleeve. And he says, that sounds like too much work. I just pluck them from the air. And Shadow doesn't understand.
Yes.
Shadow,
Because Shadow, as of now, at this point, does not realize that he is entered into a world of supernatural.
And gods, yes.
Yeah.
He's just still thinking this is some big coincidence.
Yeah.
And plus, he's still dealing with the death of his wife. So he's...
And now his best friend.
And but he just found out his wife and best friend are dead, and he's
re-entering the world as a ex-con.
So everything is on tilt for him as well.
Yes.
And then he goes to he gets thrown into the situation, and he just like, okay, just go with it. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. Which
then,
tends to be his MO.
And then Wednesday comes with 3 shots of mead, and then they discuss the terms of their employment, which all Shadow wants is to go to his wife's funeral, to tell her goodbye, and he wants $2,000 a week.
Yeah.
And he says he won't kill anybody.
And he won't hurt anybody for fun.
For fun, yes. But if
for
anyone's
pleasure.
trying to hurt you, I'll protect you. And then Wednesday agrees. Well, he takes 1 shot of mead for the back and forth.
Yeah.
And then
seal the deal.
And the second one was to seal the deal, and the third, there was something to that regard. There was the second one's to seal the deal, and the third is that we have an accord or something to that effect to make it official. And so he does, and then he gets into a fight with the leprechaun.
Yeah, because the leprechaun said he'll teach him how to do the coin trick, how to pluck them from the air.
If he can beat him.
Yeah, he said he'll fight him for it.
Well, first he said, if you fight me for it, win or lose, you get this coin. And he plops it down. And then Shadow wasn't going to fight. He doesn't want to fight. And then the leprechaun mentions Laura, and then he immediately punches him in the face.
Yeah.
And then they go into it. And then...
Thus begins their fight.
And it was a very well done fight.
Mm-hmm.
Very quick. And they did exactly what they did in the book, is that they are fighting. It does talk some of the fighting. And then it cuts to the next morning, where Shadow is hungover, waking up in the back of Wednesday's car as he's driving him to Eagle Point.
Mm-hmm.
Because Wednesday does need a driver, and he's taking an exception this time because of the way Shadow is, and based on the kind of the agreement they did is that he wants to see his wife. They get to Eagle Point, they get checked in, and then he goes and sees Laura.
Yeah.
The funeral. And then we're introduced to the best friend's
wife. Audrey,
thank you. And then from there they go to they cut to the cemetery.
Well, in the church is where she tells Shadow just how
she died.
How Laura and Robbie happened to die.
Yes, they died in a very uncomfortable position.
In a car driving down a road.
One in the other's lap.
Yeah.
Head in the other's lap.
Yeah. To be polite and not be as graphic as the vagina dentata discussion.
Yeah, we'll go there, but we won't go
to the other place.
Yes, we'll be very calm and civil on that one. So yes, that's how she died. So they were having an affair. So on top of all of that, of what Shadow, getting out, having the thrill of getting out of jail or prison, getting out of prison, going to have my girl back, I'm going to have a job lined up, everything's going to come up okay for me, to everything being gone in a matter of
like 2 days,
because it's Thursday.
Yeah.
Then it cuts to the funeral, and then there's a good time lapse where he's sitting there and everything starts filling up, and then people are leaving, and then he finally shows some anger towards
Laura. And starts asking her, all the questions that she can't answer.
Right. And then he takes that coin, because that was the other thing, was that when he woke up the next morning with Wednesday, with the hangover, he still had the coin.
That coin.
And then he takes the coin and he flips it into the dirt. And then as soon as he does that, that's when the Audrey comes back from where she was yelling at her
and
husband.
also pissing on his grave.
I did catch that where she pissed on his grave.
Yeah. She did not shy away from doing that.
And then she, in her ultimate act of revenge, is saying, well, if they slept together, we should sleep together and do it on their graves as a
so they can see us.
See us doing it. And she is
wanting her dignity back, and she's heartbroken.
Yes, and I was going to say, but she was also very drugged and drunk.
Oh, yeah.
She had like 20
Yeah, she said she had some Ativan.
Ativan, yes. Shadow rejects her.
Yeah.
And she goes on, and then as he's walking back, he notices some sort of weird flashing lights.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see the coin sink into the grave. Oh,
that's right, yes. The coin, after he rejects her, it cuts to the coin, and it sinks down into the dirt. And then you cut to him walking, and he sees some weird flashing lights. He goes to see what it is, and some sort of like VR machine, and it slaps onto his face.
Yeah.
And then it gets confusing again because he's in a limo.
This is where it changes from the book, because in the book he is just in a limo.
Yes, he is just a limo.
In this, it's a kind of a virtual reality world.
Right.
Which, I mean, you take the book was written published in 2001. So things, technology-wise, have changed since then.
Right.
And this is taking place now, and not 2001. The television show, anyway.
Yes, because well, we can't get in. I don't want to get in too far, but you meet this character.
Yeah.
And he's very young, like a 20-year-old.
Yeah, 20-ish.
Millennial.
Yeah.
Hipster type character.
Yeah.
And he's wanting to know about Wednesday and what do you know and what has he told you, and Shadow.
What he's doing, what his plan is.
What's he planning? Why is he doing this? And Shadow at this point he just knows that he works for him. He doesn't know anything. And it ends with them.
The virtual reality kids, goons,
which are faceless, kind of automaton type, but they're flesh and blood, because that's the end of it. Is the ultraviolet he gets ejected from the limo.
They pull
VR
the thing off of his face,
and then they start wailing on him, and then they hang him.
Yeah, they gallows humor comes back into play, which is something that is woven throughout the episode.
Yes.
And
that was part of one of the prophetic dreams.
Yeah.
Is that he saw a noose.
Yes.
And so basically he's being hung, and it looks like he's dying, or he's right there at the cusp. And at the very last minute, the cord breaks, and then all those goons get cut bloody, just like with the Vikings, like they get eviscerated.
The blood starts flying,
yes, blood and guts and everything is, like, oh my gosh, like if they ever show a shaving scene and like cut my neck and it's like blood is just going to gush. Kind of reminded me of the last Quentin Tarantino movie. Have you seen it?
I have not, no.
The Hateful Eight.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. But
it's a really good movie, and then at the very end, it's just like you've got a hose with a pump, and it's just pumping out blood like more than the human body could ever hold.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it feels like with these scenes, where it's like you're cutting, and it's just like there's blood everywhere. It's almost like, because in the scene it's raining.
Yeah.
And at one point it almost feels like it's raining blood because there's so much blood and guts. And then that's how it ends, because Shadow looks up and then it ends.
And that's the end of the episode.
And then next episode should be really good. I'm looking really forward to it, because they did a really good job of following right along with the book.
Yes.
So overall, first episode, what would you give it?
Out of 5 stars?
Sure, out of 5
stars.
5
Absolutely.
Stars, yeah. I'd give it 5 stars, just because I've read the books. Now, if you've never read the books, I think it's still good. I would say 4.
Yeah.
And then if you're not into the ultra violence, you may not like it that much. But again, it's not that. I mean, it's at the very beginning and at the very end.
Right.
So we'll see how much it goes on throughout the series, because I'm really looking forward to some of the other characters that are coming up.
And there's not a lot of fighting in the book either. There are fight scenes, but they're not. Nothing hinges.
Right. And they may, in the course of the book, in the course of the TV show, they may add more fight scenes to make it more.
Yeah.
But so far, I'm extremely impressed with how they did it. And
yeah, it's astonishing. It's the closest thing I've ever seen, adaptation-wise.
So I think that will wrap up American Gods. So we will next next podcast we may continue on and review episode 2, or we may just talk about something else. But as of right now, I'm very much hooked on American Gods and plan to definitely give the first season my full attention.
Absolutely.
And in honor of that, in honor of the adaptation of Neil Gaiman's book, American Gods, into a TV show, I thought it would be appropriate for us to discuss books that are adapted to TV shows and movies, and just kind of what we think about them.
Right, and whether we really like the adaptation or whether we really hated that adaptation.
Right. So what makes an adaptation so good in your opinion?
Source material, author involvement, and not changing something so dramatically. Like, changes, they have to happen. It's two different mediums. But when you change it so dramatically that you can't even recognize your source material, but you're still claiming that the two are related and not just, oh, well, this is my take on this version, like is so often done with Sherlock Holmes.
Right. They've updated it to a more modern.
Yeah.
It's not the BBC one.
Yeah.
They updated it to modern world.
If you go in with that expectation that it's going to be similar to what you have come to love in the book, then you're always going to be disappointed. But if they're upfront about it and like, well, this is just, kind of a version of that and a take on it, and then it can be okay. It kind of excuses any horrible changes they make.
Yeah.
Often.
And
Not always, but often.
I think the most recent one that's like that I don't, at this point, I do not have any qualms about, is the superhero genre, the comic book movies.
Yeah.
Because they're based on the comic books. But I have long since said I do not expect it to be anything like the comics, because they're so different, and you don't really, and that's one of the biggest arguments you hear is, like, what do you really want a shot-for-shot remake of
panel for panel
of the movie? And sometimes yes.
Yeah, sometimes you do, because it's because
you want to see these characters live and breathe that you do, and I think
that you've come to love and
I think
cherish so much.
I'm more lenient on comic books, because comic books is always reinventing itself. Like the Marvel DC universes, every 10 or 15 years they are getting a reboot, remastered. The origin stories are
different
still
worlds.
Right. The origin stories are still there. Superman's still from Krypton.
Yeah.
Spider-Man still gets bit by a spider, loses his uncle, great power, great response. The core origins are still there, but they're updated, because I think originally, Iron Man was set in, back in Vietnam, and now it's, the movie was, back with the terrorists in Afghanistan. So
that's why Tony Stark's dad could be as old as he is.
Right.
And it made sense. Now it's more like it's his granddad in some cases.
I can give it, and I think part of it is, I think what you do is how invested you are in the book. Like, I've read books, and there's some on, we'll get into a list of some of the stuff that we've read and liked. There are some that I give more leeway to, because I'm not invested in the characters in the book. I love the book, and I would say 99% of the time the book is always better than the adaptation that it's doing.
Absolutely.
But I would imagine that I totally lost my train of thought.
If it's not something you're in love with, if it's not a book you're in love with and characters you're in love with, then you can forgive the
slight changes,
the TV show or the film adaptations,
right?
For the changes they make.
And we'll get into some of those, and we can talk. Some of these both of us have read and watched.
Some of them, just one of us
has done one or
one or the other, or both.
So what do you think makes it go wrong? You mentioned something like that, if they mess up the source material so bad that it goes wrong. And I think some of it, you lose some of that translation from book to film and TV. Like, your character can come in, look around the room, and give you an accurate description, and it's so well done that you feel like you're there. And in the meeting, they pan and they show, and it's just like you don't get the same it doesn't evoke those same emotions.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the problem with some of that is, in the book it evokes a feeling, either in
And you're in the
your
character's
person
head.
or in the character. And if they try to copy that in a movie and copy how the room looked, but they don't give you any clue as to how it made the character feel, then that doesn't translate. That's just a setting.
Right.
That's just props.
And a character could be having a smell, and he talks about, it reminds me of when I was 4-year-old at my grandma's house.
Yeah.
And that gives you personalization, that humifies him. It makes you feel like you're with that character. And if they did that in a movie or TV show, like he's sitting there and all of a sudden he flashes back to he's 4 years old at grandma's house, you don't know why he's doing unless he's doing narration.
Yeah.
And narration rarely works in TV because
Exactly,
it's just you're just expanding the info, and it doesn't translate as well.
Right.
And
Unless you're having, like, back to Buffy in that season finale in season 2, when you have this character that was only recently introduced but changed the entire course of one of the characters' lives, and you have him coming back into town and, talking about these changes that are happening with these characters, and you see this drama playing out on the screen, and his voice is a voiceover, but you also know that he is someone who he has been billed as someone who has knowledge.
And then
And that's the case when it does work, when it can work.
It can work. I think that TV shows have more opportunity to get it right
Yeah, they have more leeway.
because they have more time. You can do a whole 22 episodes or 12 episodes, depending on the network, as opposed to a movie where you may just have one movie.
Yeah.
Now, some of these that we will talk about later, they did it in 2 or 3 movies, but you have to nail down, 200, 300, 400 pages in an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So yes, there will be stuff that is missed, but I think a lot of people, when they get mad, I think some people get mad and they get mad at the wrong things.
Yeah.
Because it was their favorite scene. And I guess it's not that I'm harping on them, and that may be something that they really liked, but I can understand it.
Yeah.
It's not like a key point. And yes, it may be in your favorite part of it.
Right.
But when I get mad is when they cut out key plot points or
something
motivations.
that make that character. That makes it really hard, because then it also becomes hard for someone who is a reader to understand the film. Like, you can't, because that key point is cut out, you're like, well, you can't take it and look at it like you haven't read the book. It's just not possible.
Right. And there's so many good examples. There are so many bad. Way more bad than good, I think. But
I would tend to agree with that.
and there's some that I can go through some of our lists, and I can go through my list, and the ones that we both have, we can talk about together. I mean, we can talk about each one, and then we can go through your list or however you want to do it.
Yeah.
The first one that I have is Dexter, and I've read almost all the books.
We've both read to the same book.
We still lack the final book.
Yes.
And we've all watched the
I
show.
did not watch the last season.
Okay, well, you're not missing much.
Yeah, that's why I quit. That's the only show I've ever given up on.
It got better at one point after that one season with the religious Travis.
Yeah, that's when I
not
quit.
me. It
Yeah.
got better the season after that. It got
Right.
better, and then the last season got bad again.
Mm-hmm.
But it got better, a little bit better after that, in my opinion. And then
Mm-hmm.
the last season was so much better. But I think Dexter is a good example. The first book and the first season run parallel, and I
Yeah.
think they did a really good job adapting.
Excellent. They did an excellent job.
And then they did something really well, is that they totally changed the way the show went from the source material.
Yeah.
It went in a totally different direction. It was still the same character, still different thing. It got so bad, though, that the books were coming out the same time the seasons were. So
Yeah.
when I would get a book and read it, I'd have to catch myself and say, "Whoa, no! This character needs to change. This,
Yeah.
she doesn't know." There's lots of changes, and they did change not a lot, but they kept the main storyline of the first season and the first. I would say that that runs really parallel.
Yeah.
They changed a few things about one character didn't die, one character didn't find out in the show about his extracurricular activities.
Yeah, his nighttime activities.
But then again, in the books, in Dexter, you find out that he's a serial killer who's trying to.
He was taught by his father,
who was a policeman,
to kill bad guys and to thoroughly vet those bad guys and make sure they really were bad guys.
And again, in the books, he goes more in detail and it talks about his dark passenger. In the TV show, they mention it, but they can't do like they do in the book, because in the books,
it would have made it more supernatural,
right,
had they done it in the television show.
And the TV show was trying to stay more grounded in reality.
Because the dark passenger is not a supernatural thing. It's literally a psychic thing in his head.
Right.
But that would have been hard to pull off.
But I liked
screen.
what Dexter did, because both were enjoyable. The TV show was enjoyable the way they were going, because they took parts of the second book and put it in season 2. Mm-hmm. But then after that, Dexter, the TV show, was totally separate from
Dexter the book. Yeah.
And I enjoyed both. And then, surprisingly, I got disappointed with the TV show at the end, and I've still not read the final Dexter book because I'm kind of disappointed with where the book's going. So they both ended up the same.
Yeah, in completely different ways. They ended up both.
They both don't end the same way.
Yeah.
They're not heading that way.
Yeah, and I wound up hating Dexter in both areas. Mm-hmm. I, however, wound up hating Deb in the television series, whereas in the books, I do not dislike Deb. I still like Deb. She is his
sister.
Yeah, she is my cursing goddess. I love her.
She does curse in the show. I mean,
in the first season, she did.
It's there, yes.
Yeah.
And then it was a Showtime show, so they could have totally embraced the Deb of the book, but they changed her a bit.
Yeah, a bit.
A lot.
A lot.
A whole lot, yes. Okay, the next one on my list, Lord of the Rings. I watched the first Lord of the Rings when it came out, and then they had filmed all 3. The first one came out. I was wanting to read. I read all 3 of them over a summer, and this is not an easy task to do, because this is a very dense 3 books.
Yeah.
Took
dense source material
all summer long. And what killed me in the books, if I had something to criticize, was that it would, every time they would introduce a character, they would give the lineage of the characters. So if they said, if I was coming to you, it says, I'm Travis, son of da-da-da, grandson of da-da-da. And there was a lot of them that had like E names, and they were looked all similar. So I'm like, who's talking now? Because you gave me like 4 E names, and they responded with 3 E names. So, like, who's talking? Why are they?
See, I'm still glad I haven't read these books.
I enjoy, I not to, that criticism, they are very enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, the stories are absolutely fascinating.
And you've not read the books.
No, but I have watched the films.
Have you watched the extended cut?
I can't say that I have.
Okay, because I own, as the nerd cred that I have I have them in regular DVD, and I've got all 3 extended cut DVDs.
Oh.
And those are those aren't for an easy task. I mean, they're, and they do a very good job of incorporating the story. I think the second one changes more from the book than from the movie, and that's okay. It's still a great story. But there's more in the second. The first and third movies go well with the first and third books.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of. The second one is a little bit more, and they fix most of it in the extended cut, though.
Oh, yeah.
In the second one, the extended cut, a lot of the stuff that they cut out is in the extended cut. So, I mean, they do a really good job of adapting it.
So yes, cover that.
I would say that would be one of those that you could definitely mark as a good one. The next one I have on my list is a TV show. It's out now. Lucifer on Fox. It is definitely different from the source material. Another Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, another Neil Gaiman
character.
He looks different.
He acts different.
I'm sure he sounds different.
He and even the material, and this is one that I can totally forgive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lucifer started on one of Neil Gaiman's other comics.
One of his first comic projects.
one of his breakout comics,
Yeah.
Sandman. It was a
Yeah.
75 issue run. He was in it twice. Well, not twice, but I mean, he had 2 arcs.
Yeah.
He was in the first run. He plays a character, and then he has his own run, and then it ends with him kicking everyone out of hell
Right.
and starting a bar in LA, and that's
In LA, yeah.
and that's how the TV show starts. Is he's got a bar in
Bar
LA.
in-
The whole detective thing and all of that is totally not like it is in the book,
Yeah.
in the comic book. And I haven't read, to be honest, I've not read the Lucifer comic book series all the way through, but I've read the first trade of it.
Yeah. That's
And the
what I
character
read.
is totally, it's more in the supernatural. There's a lot more stuff that they probably couldn't do on a TV budget.
Right, especially on Fox.
On Fox,
I mean,
yes.
it's
It's
not
a prime
on-
time.
Yeah, it's a primetime series. So
But it's doing great on the ratings. It's doing, from what I understand, it's on the second season.
Mm-hmm.
Probably going to get renewed for a third.
yeah,
But yeah, it's one of those that took the source material and made it its own. And I
made it its own thing.
and I liked it. Next one I have is True Blood. I read the first book, and I watched the first few seasons.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Did you
I've not watched. I've
Or
not read.
read.
I have friends who have, but
I don't think,
just never cared for it.
and people will probably tell me wrong because it's the internet, and I'm sure they will. I can't remember. I think there was a lot of differences from the book to the first season, because usually the first book and the first season
Kind of line up.
line up. I know that there was a lot of stuff that, if they tried to do it on a TV show, would just fall flat.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to name names. There's a vampire Elvis. Elvis is a vampire.
So that was in the books,
Yes,
but not in the series.
not in the show. No.
Okay, well that's fun.
Yeah.
Now, in this, do they eat food, or do they only drink blood?
I don't know. There's so many different vampire lores and
Yeah.
what they can or can't do. So I don't know if they can eat or not, or if it's just blood.
Okay.
But I mean, the main setup is there. So I know I have friends that have read all the books, and we
Yeah.
have the same friends that have read all the books, and they loved it. But I think that's another one where they kind of take the general outline of the books and
Yeah.
then they make it their own.
They kind of fashion their own stories.
So tell us if we're wrong. Tell us if we're,
I've always
if I'm
heard
wrong.
that it's basically it's vampire softcore porn.
Well, the show was.
Yeah, the show,
Okay, yeah. I don't know if the books were, but yes, definitely.
which is my big gripe.
But it was done
Because-
by HBO.
Yeah,
So it
but
was.
vampires are dead. Their blood doesn't flow. It's just not going to happen
Well,
for them.
they do the same thing on Buffy
I
and
know,
Angel.
and that was my big gripe on
that
that
was
too.
your right. They're dead.
But
they
I
shouldn't be able
forgave
to.
it because
It was a good
the
show.
feminist, girl power, late '90s stuff.
And this next one is very weird for me, and I'll try my best to explain. The next one on my list is The Magicians. This is a recent book it's a 3-book series, and I love the books. It is Harry Potter for adults. I've never read Harry Potter, so don't expect Harry Potter to be on this list. Sorry. I've watched some of the movies. But in any event, The Magicians is a TV show on Sci-Fi, and they started to do a good job of running the first book with the first season.
Yeah,
They just wrapped the second season of The Magicians. And then they go a little off kilt. They start doing things out of sequence. They start messing around with it. And the characters aren't there. So this is where it gets a little weird for me. Mm-hmm. Because I love the books.
yeah.
And I hate what they're doing on the TV show. But I can't stop watching it.
And see, the books are on my read list.
Yes, because I have recommended them to you.
Yeah,
And-
but I during that first, I thought I would watch the first episode.
Don't. If
Yeah,
if anyone here or anyone listening wants to get into the book or the TV show, read the books first, and then you may be like me and love the TV show. And there may be some people that love the TV show and never read the books. It is a lot different. The characterizations, some of the characteristics of the main people are there, but it's not.
yeah.
I think they get more wrong than they do right.
Now, is the author involved?
Lev Grossman, I don't know. I think it's Lev Grossman. I totally apologize if it's not. I don't know how much he is involved. I've not read how much he is or isn't, but
Yeah.
I do know that they've, and I can understand. I guess I can understand some of the choices they're making because it is on Sci-Fi, and I don't know how much of a budget they have.
Right.
But in the same token, like some of the stuff they're doing is similar to the book enough so that
you
they
would
could
think
have
they
gotten
could-
it right, or at
Right.
least in my opinion, gotten it right.
Yeah. Or they could have covered, or at least changed where it made sense.
Made
in
more
line
sense.
with the book.
So yes, I am on board. I am looking forward to the. Yes, it is Lev Grossman. I just looked it up. The power of Google. I am on board. I am looking forward to the third season, but I am taking it as nothing at this point is like it is in the book, or they're just taking the general outline and themes
Yeah.
and going with it. But and I'm trying to go back to my own criteria of like, were you invested in the book? Did you, and I have went back to these books twice now, and I rarely reread a book or re-listen to an audio book on it. So I think I am invested,
Yeah.
but I don't think I'm invested as I am on some of my other books that I love. I think this
Right.
is one of my favorite series in the modern era of books.
Yeah.
So, but again, I can forgive a lot, and I've gotten sucked into the story. And you may read the books and love them, that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm suggesting. And you may hate the show, which I would totally understand. Okay, so the next one is both of us have seen this, loved it. One of our first conversations of becoming fast friends because you had read the series before I had,
Yeah.
and got me introduced to it. Interview with the Vampire.
Absolutely. One of my all-time favorites. Not book, but movie.
And it was a great adaptation.
Yes, and the author wrote the screenplay, which for me, as an author, helps.
And the author is
Anne Rice.
Anne Rice.
The unforgettable Anne Rice.
I enjoyed what did you think of Tom Cruise as Lestat?
I loved Tom Cruise as Lestat, and I don't love Tom Cruise.
Okay.
I think he had the nose for it. I think he had the ability to display Lestat's cruelty and his cruel mouth as he describes it himself, or as Anne describes it for him, if you will.
Well, I don't know. Listening to Anne talk about it, Lestat is a living, breathing character, so it was Lestat explaining.
Under a pseudonym of Anne Rice. But no, I think he did an excellent job as Lestat. I think he really came to embody that, especially that particular era, because it was literally just a slice of time of one that book was. It did not cover what all the other books cover with Lestat.
Out of the whole series, which is the Vampire Chronicles, it's one of the ones that really can stand on its own. The other
Yes.
ones are kind of tied, except for
Tell the Body Thief. That's on its own.
Vittorio is totally separate.
Yeah, it's not even a
It's
chronicle.
not considered one of the chronicles,
Yeah.
but usually they all tie in, or
The
they
characters
references
at least know each other.
Yeah, they reference other characters. But yeah, Interview is very much a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
And even Tell the Body Thief, though, they still reference other things and
Yeah.
other adventures that have happened.
Yes.
Interview was the first, so I guess it doesn't have anything to reference since it's the first world building one.
Yeah.
I loved Brad Pitt as Louis. He did a really good job. I don't think
displayed Louis' broken heart very well.
Armand was Antonio Banderas. He
Wasn't young enough,
No.
but in my mind, he's still Armand. And that
That-
voice.
And that's what I was going to say was, even though if you read the characterization
Yeah.
of Armand,
He's
is
Eastern
not.
European. He's like 17.
He has curly
Auburn hair.
auburn hair. He doesn't look anything like Antonio Banderas, but he
Yeah.
knocks it out of the park, and that's something you
Absolutely.
can forgive.
Yeah.
Is that the performance is better. Is so good that you can overlook anything, and I think that's
Yeah.
one of the examples I mentioned earlier, where someone's like, "He doesn't look like him," or they have to look exactly like, and I can forgive that
Yeah.
if it makes
If it makes sense and it's.
the character, if he portrays the character well.
Yes. And he does. And two, that's another one of those things where the author changed it. The author made it happen. And if those are characters that somebody has created and they make those changes, then to me that's forgivable. Whereas if, somebody else is coming along and changing those characters, especially that dramatically, that's really not, that's a sin. If there's such thing as sin, that's one of them.
And on my list, there isn't that many on my list. This is a very short list that I put together, and there's several more on here that we're going to talk about. But there isn't that many that are better than the book.
Right.
And this one is close.
Yes.
Probably I actually have, I think, one on here that is better than the book, the source material. And I think Interview is the closest.
Yeah.
For
me, it is.
To being,
in
my opinion as well, is the closest to the source material and closest to the feelings that you get from reading the book.
Yeah, they evoke those same emotions, absolutely. And that's key as well, is that the evocation of emotions.
Next I have Odd Thomas. The first book was good.
Yeah.
The movie was
I liked the movie. I thought it was great. I loved Anton Chekhov.
Yes.
My son loved the movie.
I
It's entertaining. It's not something that I'm going to go to if I want to feel something,
Yeah.
But if I want to be entertained.
It's a popcorn type of movie, yeah.
Absolutely.
I liked parts of the movie, and I think this was one where I had the biggest gripe about the changes that they did.
Yeah.
And right now I couldn't even tell you what they were off the top of my head, but I remember there being a lot of changes with the ending and certain key points.
The boy who also saw the things that Odd Thomas saw. He saw dead people, and he saw the creatures.
Right.
In the movie, it was just some throwaway guy he was talking to. But in the books, it was a key point, and it was a child.
And I think the book, which always happens, is the book has more information when he's trying to track down the killer and all that. The next I have is V for Vendetta. Now, this is the one that I mentioned earlier where it's the source material. I think the movie is better than the source material.
Absolutely.
Now, the author, Alan Moore, will probably vehemently disagree because he doesn't like any...
He hates all of his adaptations.
All of his adaptations he hates.
Yes.
He hasn't watched... I don't think he even watched V for Vendetta. I think he's made it a point to not, ever since The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he has stopped to watch it. That one, yes, he has every right.
That was I loved that movie, but I mean, on its own, I loved it. But if you're taking it as what it was based on, then no, it's something that's completely other.
I think the movie was done way better than the source material. Next is our worst. I know it's your worst as well as mine, so we can go ahead and talk about it. Queen of the Damned, which is the second.
I could spend hours raving.
Which
about my hatred
in the world of the books, Queen of the Damned, the movie, is trying to adapt two books, which is The Vampire Lestat and The Queen of the Damned.
Yes.
And
it fails at doing both of those things.
Yes.
Dramatically.
And I think they got a lot of the characterization wrong.
Basically, it was a movie where they used the names that Anne Rice uses in her books.
And we're losing the rights. Let's
throw something together and see what happens.
And I think that one generated...
The soundtrack, though...
The soundtrack was awesome.
Yes.
And I think it got a lot of buzz because it was tied to the death of Aaliyah, who was very big music-wise.
Yes.
When that came out. So she had died right after she had filmed her scene. So it was very much tied to that. And I think that helped generate some buzz. And don't get me wrong, I have actually met people who have read the books and watched this movie and liked it.
Really?
One of them being my family. I'm still family with this person, but to me, there was so much wrong that you couldn't... There was stuff that the characters were doing were so out of bounds.
Yeah, it was too different. There was nothing that was the same.
I mean, the general plot of the story was the same.
Except there were no twins.
No. But I mean, starting off with him being a rock star and waking her up and then them banding together to fight her is kind of... Yeah,
that's what happens in the book.
In the general...
In Queen of the Damned.
That's the basic synopsis of the book. I mean, there's... The Vampire Lestat is Lestat's story.
Yeah.
And then it bleeds right into Queen of the Damned.
Which is in the book, it's several different stories telling one cohesive arc. Mm-hmm. It's from several different points of view.
So both of us would not recommend Queen of the Damned.
Never. The film, the book is excellent, mind you.
You'd recommend the books, not the film.
Did I say it backwards?
I don't know, but I just want to clarify that we are saying
We are on the side of the book.
film bad, book good.
Good, yes. Film bad, book good.
Okay, I'll just go through the rest of my list, and I'll just tell you whether I like them or not, and then we can get to your list, or how well I did it. The Walking Dead, which is based on the comic book series, they follow the script very well, but it's very much different in some places, but they kind of do the general outline. I think they do a really good job. I like both.
Absolutely. And they get a lot of the characters right.
And I think that helps. And
Yeah.
they introduce new characters that if you read the books, you kind of can know what happens, but then they throw you a curveball just to keep you on your toes. But you generally know what's going to happen.
And you're able to also separate those and take them as two different mediums and enjoy both of them equally.
I just recently did Stephen King's 11/22/63 book, and it was amazing. I loved all of it.
And you didn't watch the miniseries.
I watched the first episode,
You watched the first
and
episode.
I had to turn it off because I did not like any of how it was done. And this was one
Right.
that I got really into, enjoyed the characters, loved the book. And with most Stephen King books, you're getting to a place where you feel like you're done. Like,
Yeah.
And it's not like it's a bad done. It's like, okay, we should be wrapping up now. And then you realize you still have like
Yeah.
400 more pages to read. And that's not a bad thing. It's just...
Right.
And I got really into the characterization, the characters. I loved it. And then the way they were portrayed in the series, it's just, I couldn't get past the first episode.
Yeah.
Just the way they introduced them and how they are. It just, to me, it didn't resonate the way they were in the book.
It didn't evoke those emotions.
Exactly.
And see, I didn't read the book, but I watched the Hulu series, the miniseries.
And you liked it.
I did. I enjoyed it, but I also had no frame of reference.
So I would
For any of
recommend, I would put that on your queue as well, on your books, audio books or reading books. I would recommend that one as a
And
Stephen.
see, I've never read or listened to any Stephen King. I've only ever watched the films.
Now, in the book, we won't go into too much more about it, but in the book, it's not scary. Like, it's not like a Stephen King horror one.
Right.
They reference his other things because Stephen King kind of like has a world universe and he references other materials. And
He's created his universe, and his stuff takes
like
place
it's his Marvel cinematic universe.
Yeah.
But he's done it a long time ago. He references his other stuff, and you'll be able to pick up on some of it because it's in the pop culture world. It references it.
Yeah.
It references some of his other.
Well, in Derry, a lot of his stuff takes place in Derry, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Part of the book takes place in Derry.
Yeah.
So yes, I would recommend you read the book because once you read the book, you'll be like, that series is probably crap. I don't know. You may still like both.
Right.
But I read the book first and could not get into the show at all.
Yeah.
Preacher, which is also based on a comic, did totally different. It ended the first season in a way where the comics was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it was a good show. Loved the show.
Yeah. Yes.
It ends at the same premise of the comic, and they hit the road. But I would recommend both.
I only read a couple of the Preacher comics, but I immensely enjoyed the series, the television series.
And I'll just kind of go skip ahead because I know we've been talking about this. I Am Legend, totally different from the book to the TV show. The story is very much...
The plot's different. The message is different. The everything is different.
It's got Will Smith.
Yeah. I mean, which, if it has Will Smith, it's probably going to be successful. But
If they had made that movie and not called it I Am Legend or say it was based on that book...
Yeah, I would have loved it.
Yeah, but since they based it on this short story... Because in I Am Legend, the book, it was based on vampires or vampire-like creatures. And these creatures in I Am Legend were totally different. And the meaning and the story behind all of it was, again, totally different from what it was. And then some other ones that I would recommend both reading and watching. I would recommend Stardust, also by Neil Gaiman. I think we're both big fans of Neil Gaiman.
I was going to say, in case you haven't noticed, we are very big Neil Gaiman fans and Rice fans.
Yes. Both The Martian, the book, and the movie is very good. It is one that very much follows closely. They do some changes, but you can understand it.
Yeah.
And they're both enjoyable. I, again, immensely enjoyed the book more than the movie, but I forgave any discrepancies in both from the movie that they took from the book into the movie. Another one that I thought of while we were talking was Did you read The Watchmen?
I did read The Watchmen.
Okay, and that's one where we talked about earlier, panel for panel. Mm-hmm. He kind of shot it like the panels of the comic were the storyboard for the movie. He changed the ending, and a lot of people who like the comics were upset about the ending, but I liked the ending.
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't anything. I thought it still did what needed to happen to move the story where it needed to go. So I forgave, and it made a little bit more sense that how they did it in the movie. I also own the extended, again, owning the nerd cred, I own the extended cut that has all the extra scenes from the comic book series that they had to cut from the movie, because the movie itself is extremely long.
Yeah.
So what's something on your list that maybe we didn't talk about that you enjoy?
Oh, fried green tomatoes.
And see, I've not read...
You've not read the book?
Not read the book, watched the movie, Tawanda.
Oh, yeah, Tawanda all the way. The book is very, very different. The book has several stories in it. And it's not set up in chapters. It's set up in scenes. Mm-hmm. It is also set up in post office announcements. Mm-hmm. And it's more overt. The lesbianism in the book is more overt than it is in the film. It's not something that's having to be pushed to the back burner because of the time in which it was made.
Okay.
And
what about the main story? Is it follow pretty closely?
Pretty well, yeah.
Main plot points?
Yeah. There's some better scenes in the book that could have been a lot sweeter movie moments. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is, Ruth and Iggy's story in that book is only like half the plot. There is these whole other stories that are going on to the people in their lives that are only half mentioned in the film. Mm-hmm. It very much focuses on the white folks in the film, whereas in the book it doesn't.
It goes into the other... Yeah. The characters that are just kind of background characters in the movie get more...
Yeah, they have their own stories, their own lives. It shows them through time. You find out for sure what happened to Iggy in the book, whereas in the movie it's kind of left ambiguous. Okay. So you can draw your own conclusion, but in the book, not at all.
They lay it all out.
Yeah, you know exactly what happens. Girl Interrupted.
Girl Interrupted. Again, another one that I've not...
You've watched the film.
Watched the movie, not the book.
The book, there are key differences, but they're not unforgivable differences.
But you can enjoy both.
Yes, and you can take them as related or as separate entities. Okay. And they're equally enjoyable. If you have suffered from mental illness, then reading the book is something that becomes almost biblical and is very, very relatable.
And they don't do that as well in the movie.
No, in the movie, it's laid out on screen, but it's not...
It's kind of like a background. It's not...
Yeah. It happens to be something that's happening to these characters.
They're in the location of a mental...
Institution, yes. Also, another movie with a great soundtrack. Has one of the best film soundtracks.
Virgin Suicides.
Yes, the Virgin Suicides.
Did they do a good job of the book to the movie?
They did an okay job. I will say that.
An okay job?
An okay job.
For the film, for the adaptation.
Yeah, for the adaptation.
Love the book.
Yeah, the book, and it was one of the first books I read that was laid out like it was, told about the characters, but not by the characters.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Let's see. The Divine Secret of the Yaya Sisterhood.
Okay. Again,
also,
not...
very, very different adaptations, but equally
not
valid.
read, but seen. For me.
You have seen.
Yes. That's the one... Oh, is that the one...
With Sandra Bullock?
Sandra Bullock, where her mom's hitting the phone. And,
yes.
Okay, yes. That was a very funny scene, yes.
Yes, and then she starts hitting the phone on the counter as well. Both very good, both about the dynamic of mother and daughter.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you got more out of that than I would, but you're saying it's universally...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you get that in the film. I mean, you feel that the mother-daughter relationship.
The love and the hate and the how alike they are, but how very different they are at the same time. Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else you want to highlight or say? Or I
We
think we
should-
covered all the ones with me that we both have done.
Orange is the New Black.
Okay, I've not
You've not read that.
I've watched the first 2 seasons.
Oh yeah.
I've not. I need to catch up on my Netflix. Because what season are they on now? 5?
5.
Okay.
You the book is very, very different.
Okay.
Like it's one of those they kind of took the names and loosely based it on the
Okay.
book. It's not even the first season is directly related to the book.
So it's a totally different, almost a totally different. But you like both.
Yeah, absolutely. They both have their finer points, and the person Piper, the person that actually happened to, she in the book and in interviews I've seen with her, seems like a very genuine, very sweet human being, and not what she is in the show and what she is becoming in the show.
Right.
Which is not a very sweet, genuine, nice human being. It's something very, very different.
Very different. Well, I think that'll wrap it up. I think what we're trying to say is that it's a good discussion to have with your friends and family, and we would love to hear from you all. We're going to pretty much wrap this up. We would love to hear from you all. What are some of your favorite book to TV or movie adaptations that you've read and seen? What did you think of, tell us what you thought about Buffy if you're a fan, or maybe if you started watching it, you can sound off and tell us what you thought. And about the American Gods, highly would recommend that. Where can we be reached at?
You can find us on Twitter at the Reach the Mass.
MAS.
MAS. It's at REACHTHEMAS. Reach the Mass.
All one word.
Because we are Reach the Masses.
And that's what we want to hear from you. We want to hear from the masses and hear from you and find out what you all think. Is there something that we did right, wrong? I know I'm opening this up to the internet, and I'm probably going to get more negative than positive, but I will bear it and focus on the positives.
And we want to create a discussion.
Right.
We want to hear about books and movies, and this is where our interests are. And
if you don't like something, tell us. But be creative. If you don't like something, tell us. Let us know. Don't just comment and say you suck.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
Tell us why we suck.
Yeah. Give us constructive criticism on what we need to do better, or if something you'd like to hear more of that we were talking about, like less of me, and maybe you want to hear more of Heather. We want to know. We want to hear from you. We're starting this. We're going to keep trying more episodes, and we can tweak it as however we need to, but we can't do that without hearing from you. And before we leave, Heather has mentioned that she is an author and a self-published author. So
yes.
What do you have that's out in the reading world for people to get?
I've got a couple of books floating around. You can find them on Amazon. I do write under a pen name, H.D. Russell. The first book I wrote is called The Lika and Other Journeys. It's a short story, kind of a novella with some poetry thrown in. And then the second book is all poetry all the time. And it's called Whiplash Sorrow Cocktail.
And I did the forward.
Yeah, you did the forward.
On the second book. Obviously, you would get it for the awesome poetry, not my forward. But I would highly recommend both books. And if it was, what would you want your book, a TV or a movie?
Oh.
If from this podcast, studio picks it up because it's here so awesome and they read it, and it is an awesome book, by the way.
I would have to go with film.
With film, okay.
Only because there is too much room in television to play.
Because you don't want it to. But
I don't want it to lose too much.
But if it goes to film, they may cut too much,
Right.
Or they may add something that's totally different.
Okay, if it was going to be on television, then I would want it to be on like HBO, Stars.
Kind of like the same people that
Showtime.
treated American Gods. You would want people like that who love the material
yes, absolutely.
And do it right and not
Yeah.
do something kooky and weird just to get it
Yeah.
out there. And I am social media illiterate, I guess, in the world of pop culture. So I will be learning all of that wonderful stuff. I have.
Right. So I'm going to be reading all of your feedback.
And
So-
she'll probably be the one responding, and I'll be giving my input, and I will probably be adding my 2 cents eventually. But I will be also talking to her. So please, thank you for listening, helping us through this first episode. Usually the pilots are always the hardest.
Absolutely.
So
We're establishing our characters right now.
we're hoping you will continue to see these characters grow as the show grows, and we want you to be a part of it. So again, thank you from Reach the Masses podcast, signing off.